Hey everyone, good evening. Hope everyone's having a good night, a good Saturday. And if anyone's in the live stream already, if you have a chance, if you could just let me know if you can hear me okay. I tested it before I came on. I think I'm good, but always good to be sure. And hope you're all having a good weekend. Happy Saturday. Hope some of you got your Christmas trees up or whatever you're doing. I've got my Christmas tree up and so forth, but I've got a few lights and ornaments to hang with the kids and so forth. So getting that moving forward. Sure do love this time of year, though. Certainly. Well, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Thank you, Ellie Bree. Appreciate that very much. Love to make memories with the kids and to make the home beautiful if you can. So I wanted to just kind of hang out today, and for anybody that wants to jump in, either to just do some chit chat in the chat part of it, or if you want to jump into the live stream for a minute and talk about what's on your heart, feel free. I did have to reschedule the poetry slam. I wasn't ready, and a couple of the people that I know were kind of eager to jump into this had some stuff that threw them off. So figured we'd push that off a little bit. But I'm also, once I'm sure it's going to go forward, I will proceed to sort of advertise it in advance. But for anybody that's looking to get into our poetry slam in a couple weeks, please do keep working on your poetry and feel free to reach out to me. Let me know you're interested. I'll send out a sign-up sheet as well. But whether you sign up that way or you just let me know separately, feel free. I'd love to have you. I'd love to hear what's on your heart poetry-wise. Hey, Derek, thank you so much for confirming. Great to see you. And Miss Big Up, hey, Tim, thank you so much. Great to see you. Appreciate you being here. So I wanted to just mention before I sort of open the floor to anybody that wants to jump in, just kind of give you a quick update on a few things. Number one, a few of you asked about the 24,000 subscribers, and am I going to do an update on that? Yep, I definitely am. Thank you for the reminder. But for anyone who didn't see that, we did hit that. The numbers have been going a little bit slower from that point. I was hoping to hit 25,000 this year before the end of the year. It looks like it's probably going to be more like January or early February, but it's still not too bad. Definitely going to get there, and it's exciting. It's exciting. I'm going to guess it's going to be about 24,400 entering the new year. And so, sometime in January to February, we'll cross that 25,000 mark. That's a pretty big deal for me. That's, I remember, and again, I'll talk more about that and all that it entails, but just to quickly comment on it. I remember when I had a conversation with Derek Lambert of Myth Vision way back when his channel was still pretty big, but much, much smaller than it is now. And mine was just beginning, by a few months. And he was like, hey, you would love to support you. You're doing great work. And what can we do to move it forward? And by the way, how many subscribers do you have? I don't know if you know how many you've got. And I was like, it's about 60. He was like, you got 60? He's like, oh, we got to get that moving. We got to get that number up. So anyway, very exciting to think about finally being at a spot that's a little bit more in the sense of momentum. The momentum is there. I do hope that I can keep that going. And I can't quite get my lighting right. Let me see here. Give me 1 second. I had it right and it changes. That's a hard part about having a green screen. For anyone that's thinking about doing their own channel, green screens are awesome in some ways because they help you a lot if you don't have a place where you can have a clean background. But the problem is cameras keep on trying to constantly figure out which part of your screen is green. And so they're constantly assessing your color grading. And so it's like instead of it just being set and just it is what it is, they're constantly playing with the lighting and so forth. So there are interviews I've had where I start out fairly looking normal, and by the end of it I'm bright orange, and you can change some of that in post processing, of course, but it's still a pain in the neck to see it. You're look like Donald Trump. Don't want that. Anyway, so again, we're going to talk more about the channel update in a later either live stream or a later video of some kind. Some of you also asked, and I appreciate all the little emails I get about people supporting me with different things I'm trying and thinking through. It means a lot. It really does. So thank you for those of you that are kind of just curious, what's coming down the pike and what can you do to support me or just be curious and celebrating the different changes. And basically what I'm doing is moving the monologues to pre-recorded, but I'm changing some of the dynamics of how I prepare for them. And I thought I kind of had it nailed down as to how I wanted to do it. And I literally, like yesterday and the day before, I literally recorded this first main monologue of the pre-recorded monologues that I'm kind of shifting to. I recorded it maybe 6 or 7 times, and I'd worked on the script like for a week and a half, and I was like, it just doesn't sound right. It just still doesn't sound right. So I kind of had to walk away, as you sometimes do from those. Kind of walked away a little bit, and then thought to myself, you know what? I've got a plan. I've got another idea, and I'll keep on iterating. But I think the idea I've come up with will work for me. I've already been working on the script in a different way, and I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully, it's one of those things where it's like I'm just like, going to work on it, and then all of a sudden, okay, that works. That's fine. You can change it from here, but that works. And then at that point, sort of spit them out at that point. Hopefully, in a much quicker iteration. I do want to also just say I'm sorry for sometimes not showing up as much this past couple days. There's been so much with the kids and the custody stuff and the litigation. There's just endless things going on, and it's really hard. It's really hard, and I'm not saying that as an excuse. I know everybody else in this live stream and all the people that support this channel and are part of the community. You've all got lives. We're all busy. We're all busy. We've all got those lists of things that keep us from doing the things that we want to and that we love to do. Obviously, at the moment, my kids are top priority, but I'm really trying to shift gears to say, like, all right, well, and this is a good thing for me, I think, in a lot of areas of my life, but like, if you can't find the time for what you need to do, it's like, it's time to think, like, it's time to work smarter, not harder. You know what I mean? Like, you could say, oh, well, if you can't find time, just stay up later. Well, if you stay up later, you're going to get yourself sick, and you're going to look tired on camera. But I remember when I was playing soccer in high school, the coach would say quite a bit, some variation on the theme of the idea of, like, when you get tired, you can't say to yourself, oh, well, I'm going to still win this game because I can outrun everybody. Like, you're going to be too tired to outrun everybody. There's always going to be somebody who can outrun you. And, obviously, when you have people that are sitting on the sidelines and that shift out, now they're rested and you're tired. And so they're going to outrun you just because they haven't been running like you have. And, soccer games are pretty long. They go for a long time. And he kept on hitting home, like, if you're going to win in these games, you all have to, when you get tired, especially like in the second half of the soccer game, you have to not run faster and not work harder. You have to think smarter. Where are you going to kick that ball? Where does it need to go? And so you really have to hone your mental skills. It's a mental game. And I kind of feel like I'm in that spot with this. Being with the kids, being able to care for them and love on them is obviously just a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's so crucial, so important. But it does exponentially, obviously, cut into some of the time that I've had in the past to just focus on the channel only. So I'm trying to iterate and ideate in every which way as to how to move it forward and just be able to take a little bit less free time than I had before and make it more and more meaningful for the channel. So, but I'm excited. There's, in terms of the monologues that we've been talking about, there's an awful lot of stuff coming that is going to take, like, we've been talking about this psychology behind what has been, like, the psychology of what we were in and why do we love it in terms of Christianity and the Yahweh character and the gospel and the atonement. Why do we love it so much, and why do we think it was so real, and how do they get us, and manipulation and child indoctrination, propaganda, all that stuff. But then to say, all right, well, there's also psychology that we need to dig into about how do we heal from here, how do we restart our lives and rebuild and so forth, and just how do we love our lives? How do you, in a sense, how do you feel safer than ever in your own thought life, and how do you learn to love yourself and love your life? And I'm really excited because I think a lot of the topics that are coming, the psychology of it, I think is going to almost be shocking. I find myself shocked by it, not because I'm any more clever than anybody else. It just, when you spend all day, every day thinking about this stuff, things start to pop. It's like that what is that saying? I'm very quick if you give me enough time. I'm very quick at coming up with clever ideas if you give me enough time. But I spend all day, every day thinking about these questions. It's like it's my job. Like, why did we love this stuff, and what did it mean? One of the most important things to me that's been helpful is to really take any topic that I'm thinking through and to really just keep expanding on it and say, what are you missing? What's that really mean to you? And so, for example, one of the things I've been talking about is, why did we want heaven so much? And I know some of you would say, by the way, let me put the StreamYard link in here. If anybody's ready to jump into StreamYard, please feel free. I'll put the link in there. I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. But if anybody wants to jump in, please feel free. You're very welcome to jump in and share what's in your heart. You can share a poem if you have one ready. If you saw the earlier link for a poetry slam tonight and you're all ready, share your poetry. We'll call it a practice run and do it again on the official poetry slam. Share a song, share what's in your heart. But anyway, it's I'll just keep chatting here until someone jumps in. But when you look at something like heaven, which some of you have said, I wouldn't have wanted to live that long, forever and ever and ever. It sounded boring to me, but for a lot of us, we would have said the opposite. We would have wanted to live forever. And I'm not going to talk per se too much about that dynamic, but just saying it's interesting to start to focus on one single topic like heaven and just keep digging and digging and digging and saying, what about it? Like, what was it? And I don't mean like what was the main thing that got you. I mean like all of it, the big things, the little things. What were all the little things that meant so much to you? And I was thinking of, just as an example, when we looked for the longing for heaven, we were looking for the ultimate vindication of our faith, the proof that endurance in your faith and belief were not in vain, that this was, that this was real. And that eventually, you believe it, but not see it. Now you want to see it. The idea of experiencing eternal life, like what does that mean? We know eternal life is the ultimate goal. That eternal life is both a life that is eternal, that lasts forever, but it's also a state of being. What does that feel like? What does it feel like to be fully immersed in eternal life, as if you were drowning in it? As if it's the water around you, above, below, left, and right. What is eternal life? I was thinking about how a lot of heaven concepts too had the implication that you have finally escaped that fearful sense that all humans have, that you are running out of time. All of us feel that, the clock is ticking. And when you're Christians, though, you do have that sense of like, I'm running out of time, but I'm not really, because I'm going to be in heaven, and then it'll be timeless and it won't really matter. But at the same point, you still feel it, like you still feel that pain, even though you think you really believe, and maybe you really do, that it really doesn't matter how much it feels like time is running out. You have plenty of time, but you still have that human side of you that's like aching and saying, I don't want to see my kids grow up. I don't want to grow old. I don't want to run out of time for the beauty of this. And I think in some ways it can kind of betray the reality of the fact that you don't really believe it. Because if you really believe that you never have to fear running out of time, even while you're still, in your earthly life, if you really believe that, you would have much less anxiety about running out of time. But most Christians I've seen do not have that. There are a few that sort of have a really strong esoteric, they're just like, I know that I know that I know, and nothing phases me. I am completely at peace. There's a few people out there, and I think I had some tastes of that at times. But, to think in heaven, you're finally escaping that fearful sense that I am running out of time. I think the idea, again, I'm just giving examples. This is not, this topic is not about heaven per se. I'm just giving examples of how when you take one topic and you just like hone in and peel back the layers of the onion, you end up getting such a bigger perspective on what this thing meant to you, and therefore the damage it did to you, and therefore what the path looks like to heal from it. And so I'm just going to give you a few more examples. With heaven, the idea of seeing behind the veil of this mortal life. This mortal life feels like it's a facade, and to say, I want to see what the reality is. I want to kind of peel it back and say, what's ultimate reality look like? I want to see the other side. And it's like, oh, I'm finally here. I see the other side. I see the real side. I was thinking about the idea that heaven was certainly magical, but not in this fairy tale sense. It was like, this is the true magic. This is the magical and fantastical, but real nature of ultimate reality. This is heaven. Heaven is magical, and magic is real. That's what we were anticipating. And we knew it would blow our minds. I think for me, heaven meant seeing, of course, God on his throne, like a lot of the verses talk about, seeing God actually there on the throne with Jesus at his right hand, tangibly seeing his kingdom, tangibly seeing, as it were, a king with a crown on his head. Maybe not literally because God was invisible, but seeing the glory shine from this actual throne. I wanted to see it. And so as you dig into these things, again, just examples of how you do it, you begin to think, what did that mean to me? To see God on his throne, but in a sense, I see him now. He is the king already. What did that do to me to think that? And in that sense, you're seeing God face to face and Jesus face to face. And the Bible talks about how when you see them face to face, that is our goal, that is our deepest desire, is to see our Lord and Savior face to face. And that in that process, in that experience, you would become like them. And to think through, what does that mean? What did that mean to me? And even though this is kind of, it would have been as a Christian kind of heretical to say it this way, you're kind of looking forward to becoming a little God. You're going to become godlike. It says you're going to think like God. You're going to be sinless. You're going to be glorified. You're never going to sin again. You're always going to do what's righteous. And you're never going to die. And it says when you see Jesus face to face, you will be like him. And it says Jesus is, Jesus is like our brother, and therefore he is like the first brother that shows us the way for all the younger brothers, but we are brethren of Christ. And so it's like you kind of become a little bit of a demigod when you get to heaven. And so you think through, what does that do to you in terms of religious trauma, to think, number one, that's what the goal is. The goal is to become a little God. And number two, then you think, I just lost it when you deconvert. Like, what does that do to you? And again, for anyone just joining us, we're not talking per se about heaven itself as the main topic today, although I'm glad to see your comments if you have any. What I'm doing is giving you an example of how, what I'm doing behind the scenes of digging into these things and saying, what does this mean on the deeper level? What did this really, how did it wrap its tentacles around my mind and my spirit? For heaven, again, the idea of experiencing the healing and the restoration of all things, saying all the years that the locusts have eaten, yes, God did restore some of them in time, but he will fully restore them in eternity. The idea of receiving your inheritance and knowing it's secure forever. The inheritance of as it were, if I could picture it in a crazy way, of 1 million pirate ships worth of gold, and it's all yours. That's your inheritance, and it's secure. No one will ever take it from you. Being glorified and sinless, what did that mean? What was it? What does it do to your psyche when you think the goal of this is wrapped up in my eventually being sinless? And therefore, what does that say about you on this earth while you're still sinful? And if the goal is to be glorified, what does that do to you? Again, it's all these little spider webs of, what is this doing to you? What did this mean? I see Laura Rathmeyer in the group. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a great day. Appreciate you joining us. We're just talking about some just basic channel updates, some things I'm doing behind the scenes, and how I'm kind of looking at some of these monologues that I'm working on. And a lot of them, again, is dealing with the issue of saying, what did we really believe? And what did that do to us? But really digging into the sub aspects of it. One of the interesting things, by the way, if anyone is interested in doing that and wouldn't get triggered by reading a Christian book about stuff, systematic theologies is where this stuff really hits home. And I read many systematic theologies, word for word, from cover to cover, some of the 15 volumes. But systematic theology, if you're not sure what it is basically saying, let's take one topic at a time. And let's just dig into every last minutia of details that we can talk about that topic. So you might say, here's a book about salvation. What is salvation? What is it? How does it happen? What does it mean? And you're going to dive into everything that you can think of about salvation. Another one about end times. Another one about bibliology, the Bible and its authority. Another one about Christology, like who is Christ? Who is Jesus? His messiahship, his being the Son of God, but his also being God, the Trinity. All those things, so many little topics, but you can read a huge volume of 200, 300, 400 pages per topic. So you have 15, 20 volumes of these things. I read many of them, of course, some of them voluntarily. and I had to read a lot of them for Bible college, of course. But if you do care to dive into this stuff and you don't get triggered by that, those kind of books will obviously, just give you endless fodder for this stuff. But that's one thing, by the way, that I've heard some people, I see people posting sometimes about how they just want to kind of get rid of all their Bibles, even burn them, or rid of their Christian books. Do what's best for you, but I have saved absolutely everything from my time in Christianity. And to me, it's helpful because if you can dig back into what you were taught, and you can sort of figure out, what did I learn? Then you can figure out, not to sound like baby, like Yoda, but if you figure out what you learned, you can figure out what you need to unlearn, and you can dig into it deeply. And so for me, saving all of my Bible college notes and saving all these theology books, it's helpful for me because I can dig in and see what I was taught and what I believed, what I learned, and how that gives you the primer for how to unlearn it. That's your path. Your path is literally to undo what you did or what was done to you. Just finalizing a few thoughts here on the heaven topic that I've been going through. Not missing out on the biggest event, the biggest party in eternity, singing and dancing with abandon and total joy. Like, what does it mean to dance and literally have absolutely no concept of, I don't care who's watching. I am just going to be myself, as if I were dancing alone, and as if I knew that I would never be, no one's ever going to come and watch. There's no cameras. It's just me alone dancing, and I can do whatever I want. And I've lost any sense of, oh, you're being silly. Just what would you do in that context? I'm just going to dance like crazy. To think that's what I'm going to do before God. What did that do to my psyche to think that? What does it do to your psyche to lose that? The idea of rejoicing over the total and utter triumph of righteousness over sin and death. What does that do to you? Both again in time and when you lose it. No longer struggling with sin in heaven, but seeing behind the veil to see the ugliness and the horror of sin, what it does to your spirit, to your soul, what it did to Christ, what he had to do on the cross. It almost be like if you could picturesquely put yourself in a spot where you could see, like, that movie, the Passion of the Christ, where you're seeing the actual torture that they did to Jesus. If you had some kind of veil where you're like, all I see is somebody's being smacked with spaghetti noodles, and it's just not, there's no blood, there's nothing. And you could actually, all you could see was that they're getting smacked with spaghetti noodles. You say it doesn't look pleasant, but it's not that bad. And then you see the Passion of the Christ, where you're seeing like these cuts in the blood. Like, oh my God, that's really awful. If that's what happened to a real guy, Son of God or not, if that's what happened, if crucifixion and that kind of torture, that's awful. Well, if you could kind of see that in the same senses, but the other way around, where you say, well, if you can see the stripes that he was given, the attacks and the torture and the cuts and the bleeding, the crown, all this stuff. But if that was like the equivalent of like the spaghetti noodles hitting him, and you say, well, then what is the real torture? Well, the real torture is sin being imposed upon him and God pouring out all of his wrath on God's sin. Like, in heaven, you're going to understand the total depravity of humanity and the total depth of sin. You're going to see that picture. You're going to go from the spaghetti noodle stripes on Christ to the reality of what's actually happening. You're going to see it, the horror of it all, the ugliness, and you're going to say, I now truly despise sin, and I truly love holiness in every sense. What did that do to you when you believed it? What does it do to you when you remove it? Think about everlasting peace. The idea of no anxiety. I've got all kinds of anxiety right now, being in a divorce and custody battle. All kinds of anxiety about finances, yada, yada. I mean, we all have anxiety. But what does it do to you when you think there is a day coming when there will be no anxiety of any kind, and it will last forever, everlasting peace? And then what does it do to you when you lose that? Everlasting joy, when there is only unending happiness without even a hint of sorrow or tears or pain. No fear of separation. I mean, you think about the fear of hell or falling away, the fear of no rewards, being kind of getting in heaven but not getting a reward, being told, you made it, you did believe in Jesus, but I'm not going to give you that well done, my good and faithful servant. You did believe in Jesus, so you're technically are going to get in heaven. But no, you're not a good servant. Going to the marriage supper of the Lamb, that was a big deal. And, dig into that. Again, the biggest event in time and eternity. What does it do to you to think that's what I'm going to, and then to undo it, to lose it? Enjoying the true unity of the saints. If it broke your heart in time in your Christian life to think, why are these churches so segregated? Certainly racially, but also just theologically, across, countries, cultures. Why are we so different? When are we, Jesus prayed that we would all be one. So when are we going to be one? Obviously, we're going to be one in heaven. So it's I can't wait for this final harmony and peace, this never again sense of we should fight about something. We just know we should always treat each other with loving kindness and nothing less. And just longing for that. So I can taste it almost. I can taste the unity. And then I was thinking about, finally, there's a lot more, but I'll be thinking about, but just talking through some of my notes, the idea of enjoying the delights and pleasures of heaven without limit. When you think, all right, if the God of this universe created orgasms and eroticism and beauty and love and romance and all this stuff, if he and just the simple pleasures of everyday life, the beauty of seeing beautiful things and of tasting beautiful things or wonderful things with your eating, it's just if God can make all this beauty, just think what's waiting for us in heaven, because this is obviously just a minuscule taste of what's to come. And to think, wow. And I think this is where, again, this conversation tonight is not about heaven. I hope it's a clear example to you. I'm going to come to your comments in 1 second. But I hope it's a good example to you of how, if you're healing from religious trauma, one of the biggest things I would recommend is to really write out what you believed, but then sub-bullets, as it were, sub-points. What did that mean to you? You can't just stop at, well, I believed I was going to heaven because I was saved, because Jesus died for me. Dig into it. Dig into why you thought you needed salvation. Dig into what you thought God had planned. What was his plan? Dig into what you thought Jesus actually did. What happened to him? What was God doing to him? As it were, we kind of clarify as we're Christians, for example, we get into Christian theology deeper, and we realize, we kind of always used to say, oh, Jesus died for me. And you get deeper, no, Jesus died for God, meaning he died to satisfy God. He died on your behalf for you, but he really died for God. He died because God said, I demand something, and I demand my demands be fulfilled, and he fulfilled them. He died for God's demands fulfillment. And you dig into these kind of things deeper and deeper. And that's why I think when you're, as it were, biblically literate, if I can borrow that phrase from so many Christians, and you're theologically literate, if you really got this stuff in your psyche, where it wasn't just Christmas and Easter, and it really, you went into it, you understood it, you loved it, the deeper you go, the more work you have, as it were, to realize even if you loved it, and you said, I love my Lord and Savior, I didn't feel that traumatized by it. The fact that you went through this is a trauma that maybe you can't feel yet. You can't sense it yet. You say, oh, I don't think I was traumatized. Actually, you were. Oh, but I loved it. I loved Jesus. I love the church. I'm saying it's mythology. I wasn't traumatized, but I had a great church experience. Yeah, but these things it was like an octopus or the roots of a weed, of a plant that wound down into your psyche and around your spinal column, as it were, metaphorically, and it went into every part of every fiber of your being. And for you to say, yeah, but I loved it, you don't understand what it did to you. And just because, and I would honestly confess, I put myself in this category. When I was in it, I loved it. I loved Jesus Christ. I loved the gospel. I loved my salvation. And if you would have asked me, even at the time of my deconversion or a couple months after, were you severely traumatized by Christianity? I would have said, not really. I mean, I'm done with it because it's not real, but it didn't hurt me. I loved it. It gave me a sense of meaning and purpose and beauty. I felt like life was so beautiful because of it. And you can trick yourself into thinking that you weren't traumatized. but you just can't see it yet. And that's the insidious nature of, the whole, we talk about sometimes the Stockholm syndrome, but just the narcissism, as well as the ways that, we, even in human life, and I've been reminded of this recently in some, private conversations with people, but, people can convince you of stuff that just isn't true about yourself. And you have to be real careful, of course. That's where we have to, make sure the filter that we have for our emotions and our psyche is a tightly controlled filter, controlled by us, not somebody else, because someone else can come along and say, you're bad and you're unworthy and you're this and you're that. And I think a lot of us did not realize just how much trauma was going on because we were sold it. And it's similar to the concept to me of how the Yahweh character and the psychopathic stuff we see in the Old Testament, it really trains us to equate abuse with love. It's like if he is the definition of not just holiness and goodness, but the very definition of love, and he does this horrible stuff and commands you to do it, then you basically have been trained to think abuse is love. And if you get trained, of course, early enough in life, you can't see that. You can't see past it. That's why they want to get you while you're young. But to admit to ourselves, we have been traumatized. And these things have gotten into our psyche. They've done things to us. And we're going to be diving into that a lot in the monologues, some of the live streams. But I really hope you will keep your ear to the ground for those, because I'm doing a ton of work on them, an absolute ton of work. And I hope it really makes a difference. I hope people are like, yeah, we can sense that this is worth it, not because I'm some kind of clever, but I'm working through it and I'm improving it, and I'm trying to dig much deeper than the facade. We need to think past just the basic levels of what did I believe, what was I taught, to really the subsets of it all. Because in those details, the devil's in the details, as they say, the details of what it meant to you to need salvation and to be saved, and what it did to you. The idea of all of these things, certainly when you get into things like gender roles and patriarchy, it's a lot of it you don't even know it's happening. You just kind of, and a big distinction for me that has helped me over the years is when I was at New Tribes Mission, preparing to be a Bible translator and a tribal jungle church planter. They talked to us a lot, almost to the point of being like ridiculous how much they talked about it. They said, you have to understand the difference between belief and worldview. And they said, belief is what you can articulate. You can say, what do you believe? I believe the following 10 things. And you could shift it to yourself. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about this and that? That's your list of beliefs that you rattle off. They're on the tip of your tongue. But your worldview is what you really believe. What you really believe. And I've used this example before, so I'll keep it short. But if you were to say to somebody, I'm stepping away from Christianity here for a second, but just the difference again between belief and worldview. If you were to say to somebody, do you believe you're worthy of love? And they would say, well, yeah, of course. As a Christian, of course, you'd say, I'm a child of God. I'm a son or daughter of the King. He's declared me worthy. I'm worthy. I'm really worthy. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of approval. God has approved me. I'm on my way to heaven. Of course, I am worthy of love. And if you'd say, what's your worldview? Do you really feel worthy of love? And you need to use this power very carefully. If you ask the right questions and you open the right doors, you can get someone to admit and say, I don't think I'm worthy of love at all. And the tears will start streaming down their face. I remember that happened to me with a piano teacher at Bible college, a real sweet man. If we talk about how Christianity is awful, but there are some Christians that they're just salty with people that they do want to love on you. They're very gravely mistaken, and they're doing incredible harm, but they also still have a lot of basic love, their humanity. This gentleman is a very short little man with these little spectacles, very short, chubby, smiling all the time, little mustache. And Mr. Foster, his name was. and Mr. Foster and I were, I had a piano class, and he was going to have like 3 or 4 people in it. And he had several throughout the week, but this one time slot, he was going to have 3 or 4 people in it, and people shifted so that there were more in other time slots. And it got to a point where it was literally just him and me. And I said, it looks like I'm the only one who's taken this time slot. I assume that since there's not enough people here, that it's not really worth your time. You're going to cancel this, and I'm going to have to fit into a different time slot. I said, oh no, if you want this time slot, I'll stay here just for you. So he might have had like 7 or 8 people in his other piano classes. It's like, I will take this hour just for you. And this one day, again, every single time I met with him, like once or twice a week, it was just him and me. But this one day, we were about to start, and he was so perceptive, and he looked right at me. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the comments yet. I'll go back to them in a second. He looked right at me, and he said, "Tim, put your piano book away. Let's just talk today." And I did. He could tell something was up, and we talked for a couple minutes. We talked about, a broken relationship, like a dating relationship. We talked about my dad. My dad was he's deceased now, but he did some rough stuff to me. Told me several times he wished I'd never been born, things like that. And Mr. Foster just looked at me with this little beautiful face, these little spectacled eyes, and he literally just said, he was real quiet. He just took a deep breath, and he said, "Tim, you feel absolutely worthless, don't you?" And I'll tell you, whoa, did the tears just fly. They wouldn't have probably flown if I'd been with other people in the group, of course, but since it was just him and me in that group and that room, he asked the right questions. And if you would have said to me, "Tim, what do you believe? Do you believe you're worth anything?" I would have said, "Of course. I am worth so much." But when he dug in and he had the right questions and the right mood and the right context and the right tone, and he asked the right thing. Oh, this girl threw you to the side. This girl mistreated you, and she acted like you were garbage. And your dad doesn't wishes you were never been born. You feel worthless, don't you? And what he was doing was he was getting to my worldview. That's not beliefs at that point. This is worldview. And if you're going to heal from religious trauma, you're going to have to do enough hard work to understand you have a belief system, but you have a worldview. And you can say, I've escaped my belief system till the cows come home. I've escaped. I know it's mythology. That doesn't mean you've done the mental work about your worldview. Your worldview is still there behind the scenes, and it will come back to bite your ass if you're not careful. And I see it in comments. I see it reading between lines. And I sense that there are a lot of us who would say we have fully deconverted from the belief system. We have not fully deconverted from the worldview. And that is a long process. And that's not just to play victim and say, "Oh, I'll never get healthy." It's just to say that we're dealing sometimes too much on the surface. And it doesn't mean that it has to be a long process, but we just have to have some kind of juncture where we say, I acknowledge there are deeper levels of this and I want to get there. And that's what's on my heart. I want to take us into stuff for the next, I've probably got about maybe 600 to 800 topics already picked. And when you look at some of these, you just be like, even the title is going to be like, holy shit, what are we about to talk about here? Holy shit, this is going to get real. The title alone. And we're going to dig into some stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah. And it's going to feel intense. It's going to feel like this is a little too intense. This is feeling like we're almost getting a little too personal. But I'll tell you what, if you want to heal from this stuff, you got to get into the weeds. You got to get into the weeds. I've been chatty here, and I'm sorry. I'm a bit of a chatterbox sometimes. I'm going to go to some comments because I missed a few, and I apologize. But I was on a bit of a roll. Let's see here. Again, I'm going to post the StreamYard thing if anybody was intending to jump on and I didn't mention that, or you jumped in later. No human runs out of time. They run out of life. So does all living things. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's always now until it's over. Yeah, I agree. I think, though, that there is still, for me at least, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but for me, it feels like I'm running out of time. I'm not saying I am or I'm not in a technical sense, but for me, it feels like I'm running out of time, and I can't get it. I can't get the time. I can't make enough beauty and time fast enough. I just can't. Thank you for pronouncing primer correctly. I hope I'm pronouncing. I've had people tell me I pronounce things incorrectly. One thing I need to look up. Somebody told me I'm mispronouncing nihilism. That's nihilism or something like that. So there's some words I'm probably mispronouncing, so I apologize. Someone told me I'm using Stockholm Syndrome incorrectly. I looked it up right away. I was like, oh, I'm using it exactly as the definition says, but I guess there's different ways of looking at it. But, if I'm like a broken clock, I'm right at least twice a day, right? Allie Bree says, yeah, I really wish I didn't throw away my middle school, high school highlighted and noted Bible. I feel so removed from who I used to be. I wish I could look back at it. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, we don't want to, gaslight and trigger ourselves on purpose in one sense, but there is a certain point at which getting back to it can, in the right context, if you feel strong enough, it can be healing, because you now know what you specifically need to undo. My whole family is deep into Christianity. I have separated myself from them and feel guilty and sad. I always feel the strong push to bring my brothers to deconstruct, but I'm afraid they all suffer. Yeah, that is tough psychology. When your whole family is into it and they won't listen, and they're just you're the outsider, it's one of the toughest parts of this journey. I certainly feel for you. I've been seeing more and more people recently talk about their family writing them off and feeling like they've lost everything, and I'm so sorry. I wish you good times with that, or good progress with that over time. But I definitely would say the more that you're able to build your community, the better. So assume the worst, hope the best. Assume that they're going to stay stuck, and assume that they're not going to respect you, but hope that they do. But build your community assuming that you're going to need it. I'm so sorry. Hey, Susanna, great to see you. Hi, everyone. Sending love from Scotland. Great to see you always. I know it's late there, so thanks for staying up for a few minutes for us. Miss Big Up says, I thought about throwing away all my Bibles I'd accumulated, but kept a few. Yeah, it's interesting. I've kept everything. I keep everything too for a very different project. I think I've told everyone about this once, like it was 6 months ago. I study words, and I study specifically the impact of specific sound combinations. So I would never throw a book away, if only simply for the fact that I look through, and it's funny, when I read a book, if you could see my notes, I'm not just making notes. I'm literally like underlining consonantal clusters, and I study, like, what does that specific order, like if you have an R followed by an S followed by an L followed by an A followed by an M, but what does that do? Like, does that have an emotional impact? I've been studying that for years. It's when I went through linguistics training, they said that's all arbitrary. It's all arbitrary. There is no meaning. And there was a book I came across called Gods of the Word, and it challenged that and said, no, there's an impact of specific consonants and vowels, the way that in the order that they come in, they have impact. And it's interesting when you read something like Jabberwocky, you can sense that when you read the Jabberwocky poem, like, holy smokes, this is absolute nonsense, but it is having an emotional impact on me. It's interesting. So I use that with books too. I see Laura's joined us in the back. By the way, Laura, I'll jump in 1 second. So thank you so much for jumping in. I'm just going to read a few more comments here, but we'll bring Laura in about 1 minute. Hope you're doing well this evening. Absolutely. Do I think the Bible is a good fictional novel? I mean, good in the sense of moral, no. Of course, it ends with most people being burnt by their supposedly good father. Do I think it's a fascinating work of fiction? Yes, I think it's very fascinating. I study it. I told people last week I'm going back to memorizing. I don't think that's probably a good idea or recommendation for most of you. Please do not memorize scripture, because most of you, it's going to probably trigger you too much. For me, for my job, I think it's in my best interest to be memorizing scripture again. So I'm memorizing it. I think it's fascinating because it's again, not good in the moral sense, but it's good in the sense that when you look at what they're doing, especially in the Gospels and Acts, it is mind-boggling, and the epistles, but especially when you think about, okay, they're copying from Homer's Odyssey, from Neoplatonism, from Pythagoreanism, from the Old Testament, from a bunch of other sources, it's like, that is crazy. Like, who is able to do this? Who can do this stuff? It was whoever did this was very well read, very, very well read. They were very highly educated to do this. So yeah, I think it's good in quotes in that sense. But yeah, absolutely fictional. I would say more of a fascinating fictional novel. And of course, it's fascinating that people took it literally. It's fascinatingly sad. See here, almost 11 there. Yeah, she's so for Susanna in Scotland, it's 11:15. Just joined in. I was 6 or 7 when I was saved, so obviously my theology was a bit childish. Yeah, all of ours was, but they try to get you while you're young. I'm going to bring Laura in here. We'll come back to the comments, but Laura has been waiting a couple minutes here, so I want to bring her in. So Laura, if you're ready, I'm going to add you to the stage. Let me actually delete that or move that comment out. And Laura, hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can, yep. I see a guitar, so it looks like we're in for a treat.
Yeah, this is my little travel Enya. It's called an Enya Nova Go.
Nice.
So you can take it camping with you, or you can take it outdoors. Haven't done that yet, but we get a lot of rain here in the Pacific Northwest, here in Washington. And so I decided to get one of these.
Nice. Did you say it's called a Nova Go?
Yeah, it's called an Enya Nova Go, I believe.
Oh, it's just interesting because Nova means doesn't go.
Oh, does it really? Oh, that's funny.
That's funny. Doesn't go, goes.
It's ironic. It's the irony of it all.
Yeah. Is that related to the singer Enya?
No, it's not. I wondered the same thing, but it's not. Okay. Again, another irony. It doesn't go. It's not related to Enya. Yeah, so it's confused. Yeah. Kind of like me, gets a little confused.
Oh, good. Well, we would love to hear what are you going to do for us tonight?
Well, I've been working on a song. It's another of my songs in progress. So it's a little rough, but again, I'm trying to just not the perfectionism stuff. So I'm just trying to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. If I make mistakes, it's fine. It's not perfect. It's raw, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, we'll call it a practice for it, and then we'd love to have you do it again for the Poetry Slam in a few weeks. So yeah.
Okay,
well,
cool.
I'll go on mute here and share whatever.
Oh, and I have to say, Tim, I've got my, don't hate me, don't be a hater. I've got my caramel macchiato.
Very nice. That's another one we'll agree to disagree on the pronunciation for it.
Okay.
Macchiatos are good though. I like that. I'm a bit of an addict right now. I'm trying to get off of my coffees, but right now when I'm working nonstop, it feels like it's you got to do something to stay awake, right?
Oh yeah. All right. Okay. First, I want to say I love all of you guys, and I hope you all have an awesome day. So bear with me. This song is called Spoon-Fed Lies. Here we go. Spoon-fed lies, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, open wide, dirty, rotten sinner. When you spoon-fed lies, monster in God's mirror, inner self begins to disappear. Well-fed, deadly bread, faith and blood, clothed in dread, horror stories flood your head. Kill the lights, crawl in bed. Spoon-fed lies, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, open wide, dirty, rotten sinner. Spoon-fed lies, monster in God's mirror, inner self begins to disappear. Awful lies won't swallow any longer. Sense of self growing stronger. Realize something's really wrong here. Who am I? I don't belong here. Unstable fable in my skull, no longer able to control. Sorry. Unstable fable in my skull, no longer under its control. All walls crumble, watch them fall, watch them fall. No longer faithful, not at all, not at all. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Very nice. Very
I
nice.
messed up a bit there. Oh well.
I was thinking that if we can ever get you to one of the like Skepticon or BajaCon, I haven't been to one myself yet. With stuff going on in my life, I haven't been able to get there. But we need to get you on stage in front of the whole group, and and also we need to get you in a studio so we can get a really good recording of that. And put
You're
this
so
on blast.
kind.
That sounds
You're
like.
so kind.
Sounds
I have been to Comic-Con, Tim.
Okay.
I have been to Comic-Con. I dressed as a frugal fairy.
Nice.
And
nice.
my husband was Superhero Zero.
Very nice.
But hey, I'm open to anything. Hey, if you want to, hey, I'll sing. I'll sing it some whatever.
Yeah. Can I ask? Do you have a YouTube channel yet?
I do not.
Gotcha. Well, let's touch base when you've got time, offline, and let's. I would love to be promoting that if you decide it's ever right for you. I know there's a lot of things that go into doing that, but if you ever feel like it's something you'd like to consider, I'll absolutely support you. You'd be awesome at it, and start one with music and poetry, and who knows where you'll go from there.
Hey, Tim.
But, good stuff.
Tim, you know what? That's where my heart is. I would so love to just help people, through deconstruction. I'm still going through deconstruction, but what you said earlier in the chat, it really spoke to me. I was almost in tears, and I thought, I don't even know if I can sing, because we can relate to what you shared. So that's a whole other story, but again, love everybody, and I hope you all have an awesome day.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Laura. You're always glad to see you on the channel. You're always welcome. So thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was awesome. Very, very cool. Amazing talent. Amazing talent. And it's amazing too how much the poetry just pops into our minds and is coming out of our hearts. Like that verse informed us when we were Christians, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, and it really is true. There's so much to think through and to express. And at first, you don't always have words for it because you don't really know what's happening, but eventually you find the words, or someone else finds the words for you, and it's really interesting. And Laura had commented before, definitely traumatized here. Yeah, so many of us are seeing it more and more with clarity. I'm so glad this is a healthy distraction from all the sadness. Susanna, please feel a big hug from all of us. Real big hug from Atlanta and from all of us around the world. Psychology says, there's still a voice inside of me afraid of hell. I'm out of Christianity for a long time, but was always prone to anxiety, and this hell shit never completely left me. Yeah, that's what they want. They want you to fear it. They want you to be so afraid, whether it's Pascal's wager kind of garbage or just a simple fear, like you're on your way to the really bad place, and the biggest thing I would say, and not everyone would give you this advice, the biggest thing for me, get really deeply informed about the mythology around hell. So, for example, when you read in Jude, for example, and other books, is it First and Second Peter, or some of those books, read when they use the words Hades and Tartarus. Look those up, in Greek mythology. They were referring to stuff that everybody knew about. And when you realize this stuff was going on for so long, but then also go back further to Zoroastrianism, and you realize ancient Judaism doesn't appear to have really believed in a hell. They kind of believed you went to an underground world, like a dark cavern where you're just kind of a zombie for forever, maybe, or for a while till God remakes it in some way. But you're just kind of like a zombie, whether you're good or bad in life. You're just kind of a zombie. And all of a sudden they get taken away to Persia. They get exposed to Zoroastrianism, where there's this belief that there's this, holy fire that's just going to come and burn everything up someday. And the only thing that will remain is if you're pure, like this dross being taken away from silver. And as soon as they get exposed to that, what happens? Hell comes in the discussion. It's just it's crazy. And of course, a lot of not just Zoroastrianism, but Greco-Roman stuff. But it all kind of it's this what's the word I'm looking for? It all influences each other, So that's my first advice. My other one, maybe lesser important to me, but maybe important to you, is really think about the idea of if there were a God and he were willing to create a hell, or if somehow you could argue, well, he didn't create it, but it's there and he sends people there, like that he had the power to stop it or to dissolve it, destroy it. Would a good God ever do that? And therefore, when you conclude a good God would not, even a God that's, quote unquote, holy, he's also Father. He's also described as the Father of everyone. And if he's your Father and he's willing to burn you forever, what kind of Father is that? We're talking about absolute psychopath. I mean, not just like, well, he's a psychopath in a very generic sense. Like he's like a psychopath well beyond the worst psychopaths of history. If he were real, he would not be. He would be the God of your nightmares. You would not want him to exist. But I'm so sorry you're struggling with hell. I've heard a number of people say that over the last few years. I feel bad for you because it dropped for me immediately. Like when I escaped and I realized, oh my gosh, this is all fake. This is all mythology. My expectation of heaven and my fear of hell, it dropped in milliseconds. It's like none of it's real. So for those people in the group, in the community that are still struggling with it, I almost can't imagine, but I can, but I can't. And I'm so sad that it's still digging deep into. But that's where, again, if this is in your beliefs and or worldview, and especially if you have some sense, not just that it's there and that you might end up there, but that you deserve it, and that you've always deserved it, and you always will deserve it, and especially now that you've become an apostate and a heretic, that you really deserve it. Man, that's some horrible stuff. That's part of the insidious nature of Christianity. They want this in you so bad that when you leave, it still eats you alive. It's nasty stuff. Certainly, again, best wishes for your journey to get healthier and more truthful going forward. Tim, I was just reminiscing on how much I loved praying, even though I know now I was talking to myself, really. Hey everyone, can everyone hear me okay? I apologize. I hope you can see me here. I apologize. I'm not sure what is going on with with StreamYard on the computer, but it was working just fine there, and all of a sudden it just changed. So I'm hoping you can hear me okay. But I'm going to finish up here since I'm just on my cell phone. You can see behind the veil. That's behind the veil. You wanted to see behind the veil. That's behind the veil. That's the green screen. That's the magic. I'm just looking at the comments here, and then we'll finish up. And I hope you can hear me okay. Laura said, thanks all for the kind words and encouragement. That's awesome. Thank you all so much for supporting, Laura. Great song. Yeah, awesome song, Laura. Thank you so much. Unstable Fable in My Skull. I love it. Love it, Laura. Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing that, Laura. Messiah, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Hi, Slippery Crush. Hi, chat at a party. So not fully listening, but hope everyone's good. Thank you so much, Messiah. I always appreciate your support and showing up to be part of the community. So glad that you're able to do that. Linda says, does worldview supersede belief? By the way, I know that the audio is not going to be as quality as the microphone, because it's a monster microphone, but hopefully you can hear me enough to at least hear what I'm saying. So to answer the question, does worldview supersede belief? Yes. Worldview is if you want to use the word belief in both senses, say what are your surface level beliefs and what are your core beliefs? Put it that way. Surface level beliefs would be beliefs. Core beliefs would be your worldview. I separate them that way, but whatever words help you. But it's the idea of what do you really believe? What do you really think on the deepest level? And that's going to be true both of your theology as well as anything else in life. Do you really, for example, a good example would be, do you really, really, really think that women are just as important as men, and that they're perspectives, or do you really think men are in some way in charge? Well, beliefs might be one way, but worldview might say something different. Do you really believe that your value is in your modesty or your virginity, or whether you're a virgin on your wedding night? You might say, well, no, I don't believe that stuff, but there's a part of us where that might still have been there. Maybe for those people in the deconversion community who would say that they're past that, there's still some kind of shame that they went through, where they say, when I got married, I was not a virgin, and somehow I had this scarlet letter, and it's still there. So there's many ways in which the worldview is something that's worth digging into. Laura says, so true, lots to unravel. Yeah, it really is true. Real heart work, very healing. It is. Derek, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you had a comment you were going to add there. I'll look through in the comments further down, but either way, thank you for your support. It means the world to me. It really does. Susanna, I love it, Laura. Absolutely great, great song. Get her in the studio. Those lyrics were great. And Laura, absolutely, so glad. Genuinely good. Yeah, again, I apologize for the audio issues. I will be looking into that, see if I can figure out what's going on there. But I'll jump on the phone next time a little bit faster if I can't figure it out, just while I'm sorting it out. And see here. Yeah, maybe there is a God after all. He's punishing me for it's funny though. That David, that's a great. Let me put that comment back up. That's a great example. I know you're just probably kidding, but that's a great example of how some of us can really get into this, where it's a worldview level. We can say, there's no God, he's not going to get me. But then when something goes wrong, it's like, God, this might be kind of getting me. And it's weird. It's very animistic as well, if you're familiar with animism. You can deconvert all you want, but there's animism that's stuck in our hearts. Animism is woven into the core of Christianity, and we're going to talk about that on this channel. But animism is also just part of what we do. Like the whole, if you don't knock on wood, something bad's going to happen. If you say this rosary, pray this prayer, say this rosary, move the beads to your finger, you're okay. There's little things we do, and our worldview, we could kind of say, oh, that's garbage, I'm done with that. But then something bad happens, like, the universe, whether it's God or the universe is getting you. It's funny how that stuff can stick with us. Marie says, "Hi Tim, I appreciate you getting the word out." Thank you so much, Marie. Appreciate your support so much. I really, really do. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm sorry, Alex. I still don't know what happened. It disconnected my camera and my audio, and I couldn't get them either one back on. So my apologies. Thank you, Laura. I'm so glad y'all can hear me here. Well, since I'm sort of winging it here, getting back on the live stream through my cell phone, I'll wrap up. I just want to say again, thank you all so much. And if there's anything that we talk about where you're like, I really hope you're going to dig into that particular topic because it's interesting, sounds of interest to you, please feel free to reach out. If you're not my Facebook friend, I'm at Harmonic Tim. And so add me there at Harmonic Tim, and we'll chat. Let me know what the topic is, and also I'm always eager to hear from anybody that wants to do an interview. So if anybody is kind of on the fence about that, I'm pretty booked for the rest of the year, but I would love to get you on the calendar for January or February. If you feel like you understand, the importance of telling a story well, and you want to tell your story and some of the insights that you've learned along the way, please feel free. Reach out, let me know. I would love to get you scheduled. And again, even if you don't think your story is that important, if you can think through, again, the worldview level of what you've been through, what you were taught, what you've had to unwind, your story can become someone else's survival manual. I really believe that. You can make a difference. Even if you feel like, I don't ever intend to have a platform, my story is just, it's sort of average. It's, you've all probably heard a version of it similar before. We all have similar stories in some ways and some similar trajectories. But that's an invitation, as it were, as for you as a storyteller to become a good storyteller of your story, but also to dig into what did I really believe and what did I have to undo. One of the things I tell people as they're preparing for an interview is, because some people reach out and it's just all we do is schedule it and then we do the interview. But some people say, "Can you give me some pointers?" And one of the pointers that I give people a lot is, I want you to write out the timeline of what happened first, but then I want you to go back. I want you to go back and I want you to say to yourself, what were the things that were impacting me? Like, what was I thinking through, and what were the realizations? In other words, if you were doing a YouTube short where you'd say, I don't want to watch the whole interview, but give me the power moment, the power minute, the power 2 or 3 minutes. And YouTube shorts were just 1 minute, now they're 3 minutes, but up to 3 minutes. But what is the power minute? What is the impact? What's the money shot? And that's where you might slow down and say something like this, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling my story. I'm telling my story. I'm telling my story. And then you say to yourself, give yourself that silence, that poetic silence in your story, and say, and I realized I was stuck in a patriarchal machine, or I was stuck in mythology, or I was entrenched in shame. And pardon my using this expression, but you need to get into preacher mode a little bit. Get yourself to the point where you say, I understand that if I either get quiet, real quiet, and whisper and emphasize, this was mythology, where you get loud, this was ridiculous what I believed. I was pretending to eat a dead man's flesh and pretending to drink a dead man's blood. This was ridiculous. Get your emphases in there. And you begin to push those narratives and say, how can I present my story in a way that says not just what I went through, but what I was taught and what it meant to me and what I had to undo, and where the biggest pain points of and on the other side, the glory points of this were when I realized my life was shifting to the other side. Get those points in your head and get them written down. And when you get to your interview, you say those, you say your story slowly, but then you get to the PowerPoints. And wow, that can make an impact, where people like, holy smokes, that person just put words in my mouth. I've been saying that in my head and I didn't even know it, but yes, this is ridiculous. Or yes, I'm stuck in patriarchy and it's so damaging. Or gender roles, or whatever you'd say, the shame of it all. it's good stuff. It's painful stuff. It's a painful journey, but anyone that wants to, please reach out to me. We'll get you on the books. If you don't hear from me right away, sometimes I just can't keep up with the messages, or life's chaotic sometimes, as it is for all of us. But I will get back to you. And anyway, I just want to say thank you all so much for being part of my life, part of my community. You all mean the world to me. You really do. You all, it's like we lose a lot when we deconvert, and we need to replace it with some real people. And you all are more real to me, as much as we're not sitting in a church somewhere. In many ways, you all are more real and more impactful to me than the people that sat next to me in the pew for 20 years. It's insane how that works. So anyway, I'll let you all go. Thank you all so much again. My sincere apologies for the technical issues, but keep working on them. Hopefully get it knocked out and not repeat it. But thank you so much. Hope you have a great night, and I'll be in touch soon. Thanks again.